All right, everybody, welcome to Sports and Money. I'm your host, Ben Parker. Thank you so much for being with us today. It is a privilege to have you on board. Today, we are covering the Cleveland Browns, and we're going to be looking at their cap situation this offseason. It's early in the NFL offseason. They've still got a ton of decisions to make, like everybody. This is really a two-part video, so we're going to start off by looking at the Browns' cap situation. The second part, for those of you who just want to hit the financials and then don't want to hit the second part is the backstory. Some of the decisions the Browns have made that have gotten them to this point, particularly things that they've done in the front office, not so much the things that they've done with players, but the decisions they've made in the front office personnel that has gotten them to this point, some of the strategy that's gone behind it. Let's look at the financials first, because I know that's what a lot of you would like to see. Tap into that right now. I've got on the board here 8 players. 4 guys here, we'll get to them in a minute. I've got 4 more guys right here, 8 total players. This is every player on the Browns who at the moment is making more than $4 million next season. These 8 players are the only players at the moment that the Browns have who are going to be making more than $4 million cap hit next season. Everybody else, and the Browns have about 73 players on the roster right now. They can have that during the offseason. That number of players can swell to really large numbers. Then as they get through the offseason, through training camp, they get close to the first week of the actual season itself, they've got to trim that down to the small 50s. Now, right here, let's start and see how the Browns are spending their money. We've got 4 guys, and these guys are all on the offensive line. So 4 of the top 8 highest paid players that the Browns have at the moment, and again, this is just a snapshot, 4 of the top 8 players that they have are on the offensive line. No surprise with Joe Thomas being right there at the top, left tackle. He's going to have a $14.3 million cap hit. We're going to come back to him in a second. He's got a large cap hit. He deserves it. He's one of the all-time greats. Guard Kevin Zeitler is also making $12.4 million cap hit next season. That's very large. Matter of fact, that's the largest for a guard at the moment. Somebody could surpass that this offseason, but at the moment, that's the largest for a guard in the NFL. After that, you've got center and guard Treader and Bitonio making 6.8 and 6 even cap hit for next season. Now, it is not unusual for NFL teams to have a lot of money invested in the offensive line. As I've said before, offensive linemen take a long time to develop. Usually, it's in their 3rd, 4th, and 5th seasons before you really start to see what they can do in the NFL, and you really start to see that starter quality ability shine through. It just takes them longer to develop. So because of that, you don't get as good a deal in their rookie contract. If you're really going to invest in your offensive line, it's going to be during that second contract. So they're more expensive generally in order to get the quality you need and the cohesion you need on the offensive line, if that makes any sense, as compared to other positions on the field. So, but the Browns really have carried this farther than most NFL teams. Most NFL teams, even though you have large amounts of money in the offensive line, the Browns have more, typically more than what an average NFL team does. Right here, you've got about 38 mil, if I'm counting it right, about 38 mil tied up just in the 4 players starting on the offensive line. So the Browns analytics, and they're analytics heavy at the moment. Their analytics have led them to believe that investing in the offensive line is really important. That's why you're seeing those higher cap numbers, so much money invested in the offensive line. Now, you move over here, these are the other 4 highest paid players on the Browns. These guys are all on defense, okay? So the Browns at the moment aren't paying a lot of money for wide receiver, quarterback. They're not paying a lot of money for cornerbacks. Generally speaking, they've got 1 here. They're not paying a lot of money for anything other than offensive line and a couple of positions on defense. They did pay a lot for Jamie Collins. He's got a $12.2 million cap hit. Just below him, Myles Garrett is actually still on his rookie contract. So he's making 6.9 cap hit this season. After that, you have Christian Kirksey at linebacker with 6.2, and then Jamar Taylor with a relatively small cap number at 5.3 playing cornerback. So that's how the Cleveland Browns analytics have derived that, their biggest amount of money to be spent. Now, the Cleveland Browns have $108.7 million available in cap space as we speak, $109 million approximately. That is far and away the most cap space of any team in the NFL at the moment. Second place is the Jets. I think they have about $89 million to spend. After that, it really starts to drop off, and a lot of teams just don't have but about $20 or $30 million in cap space. Just for a reference point, the Cleveland Browns have $109 million in cap space. So also, in addition to that $109 million in cap space, the Cleveland Browns have this year 12 picks in the NFL draft. 2 of those are in the top 4 picks. 2 more of those are in the top half of the second round. So the Cleveland Browns have 4 of the top 35 picks in this year's NFL draft. So they have been horrible the past 2 seasons. And this video, I'm not going to try to defend anything that the Browns have done, but I am going to try to explain how they got to where they've gotten. They have been horrible. Easily the worst team in the NFL the past 2 years. Not just that, they have been historically bad. I think, if I remember right, that nobody in the NFL has ever been this bad for 2 seasons in a row. They have been horrible. There has been a price to pay, but their war chest, the things that they have accrued, have been astounding. They have had 10 picks in the last year's draft, 14 picks in the draft before. They did get the number 1 pick with Myles Garrett out of that. So they are loaded. They have 12 draft picks, 4 of the top 35 this year, and they've got $109 million in cap space. So none of this has been on accident. And from here, I'm really going to start segueing away from these financials. We've seen they've invested in the offensive line. They've got 4 relatively high cap numbers on the defensive side. Let's look at how they got there, because this isn't an accident. I hear all the time, what are the Cleveland Browns doing? Are they just that inept? Why are they doing what they're doing? They didn't get here by accident. They have made a choice. And really, to be honest, I don't want to say that they're copying other teams from other leagues, but they are using the same model that other teams from other leagues have been using the past few years. Cleveland Browns are trying to do the same things. Now, they let go of Sashi Brown. He was the general manager. They've let him go. John Dorsey will be taking over. John Dorsey is more of a football guy. Sashi Brown was heavy on analytics. Sashi Brown, 2 years ago, brought in Paul DePodesta in the front office, and DePodesta is called the Chief Strategy Officer. And a lot of these analytics may have come from Paul DePodesta. Sashi Brown had already started this before DePodesta even got there. But certainly, I think once you saw DePodesta get there, you really saw the Browns' analytics and their habit of doing things differently from everybody else in the NFL step up as well. Between Sashi Brown and Paul DePodesta, you really started to see the Browns not just use analytics, but really start going to extremes. And that's why you've seen these horrible records the past 2 years, historically bad records on the field. It's also why they've got such an extraordinary number of draft picks and cap space. So it's not on accident. This is on purpose. This is the strategy that they've employed to do this. I might say, well, why let go of Sashi Brown? I think my opinion is that the public pressure from being so horrible on the field the past 2 seasons led to Sashi Brown exiting. Why let Sashi Brown go and not Paul DePodesta? That would also be an indicator that perhaps Sashi Brown was making more of these decisions, or that simply Sashi Brown had been there for 5 years. DePodesta has only been there for 2 years. So it would seem, moving forward, and again, you never really know, I want to stop and say this, you never really know how the power structure is working in an organization unless you're in that organization and part of that power structure. So who knows, owner Jimmy Haslam, how much interfering is he doing? Is he stepping in and weighing in on draft picks? Is he weighing in on free agents? Is he stepping in and trying to make football decisions that he may or may not necessarily be capable of making? Is he really letting these guys that he's picked do the job that he picked them to do? Don't know, but they decided to let Sashi Brown go before Sashi Brown could ever see the results of what he's done. So John Dorsey, the new general manager, who I will cover more in a second, John Dorsey has a ton of things that he has, and it's not by accident. Here's the 2 things that he's got. He's got cap flexibility, and he has a ton of draft picks. And these are the 2 things that Sashi Brown and Paul DePodesta, and who knows who's really made the most decisions over the past couple of seasons with that. These are the 2 things that the Browns have been chasing the past 2 seasons. Not wins. If you think that the Browns have been trying to win all this time and are just that inept, then you're missing the point. They have actually not been trying to win. I think it's obvious to anybody who's really been following the Browns. They are not trying to win at the moment. They're trying to build cap flexibility, which they've done, and they're trying to build assets or just add up draft picks. So they've really stockpiled this. This is a decision that they have made. They've sacrificed wins over the past couple of seasons. They're not the only organization to do this. The Boston Celtics have spent the past several seasons under Danny Ainge stockpiling draft picks, just tons and tons and tons of draft picks, and then they've got the flexibility to flip those draft picks either for a trade or to actually use those draft picks. And they've actually done some of both and done it very well. The Boston Celtics are now one of the top teams in the eastern side of the NBA because of those decisions. You turn over to Major League Baseball, you've seen the Houston Astros being the most extreme example of this. Just a couple of, I want to say 4 or 5 seasons ago, they were heavily criticized for doing the same thing. They did a total teardown, a complete teardown, and basically wasted 2 or 3 seasons of horrible, horrible losing. In the process, they built up draft picks. They were getting higher draft picks. They were making good draft picks, and they were able to restock that minor league organization. Those minor leaguers came up, developed very quickly, really, and from there, the Astros have done nothing but win the past 3 seasons. So the Browns are not the only ones to be doing this. Nobody's really tried this to this extreme in the NFL. Now, I want to point out, analytics have been in the NFL for a very, very long time. Major League Baseball was slow to catch on to analytics, but analytics have been around in the NFL forever. It started in the 50s with the Cleveland Browns under Paul Brown. They really started bringing this in. The Los Angeles Rams of the mid-50s really changed it forever. They're the ones who really, really brought analytics to the draft. They changed the draft forever in the mid-50s. Teams started copying that. Then, in the late 50s and the early 60s, you saw the Dallas Cowboys take what they'd seen the Rams do in the draft and just apply it to everything in the whole organization, and football changed forever after that. So analytics have been around in the NFL forever. So because of that, and this is the point I want to get to, because analytics have been around in the NFL for so long, the margin of difference the new analytics will now make is smaller. So in theory, can a Paul DePodesta, and DePodesta is a brilliant guy, by the way, came over from Major League Baseball. We're going to see if what he did in Major League Baseball can work in the NFL. But he is a brilliant guy, whether it works in Cleveland or not. DePodesta is a brilliant, brilliant guy. Sacha Brown, very smart guy too. We'll get back to him in a second. Can that analytics, in theory, improve a football team? I think it can. The problem is, and this is why I think the second reason Cleveland made the switch from Sacha Brown over to John Dorsey, is that no matter how smart Sacha Brown is, no matter how smart Paul DePodesta is, they do not seem yet to have the ability to recognize talent, to truly recognize in the draft, to be able to recognize talent. And there are not a lot of people in this world who can. The NFL is filled with people who can kind of sort of pick out NFL talent, but there are very few people in the NFL, in the world, who can truly look at talent in college and see how that will translate on the field to the NFL. There are very few people in the world who can do that. Dave Gettleman over at the New York Giants, did it with the Carolina Panthers, is one of those guys. Bill Polian is another one of those guys, now retired, but Bill Polian was one of the all-timers at recognizing talent. There are other people who can do it, but not a lot. And that's really been the problem for the Cleveland Browns over the past couple of seasons. They've had these draft picks, they've had the cap flexibility, and yet you haven't really seen the talent upgraded. Matter of fact, you watched them last year trade back and back and back again out of the first round, losing out on several good draft picks last year that they could have had. The draft before that, you watched them lose out on Carson Wentz. Now, it's anybody's guess as to say when a quarterback is actually going to be awesome in the NFL when they're not. It's a 50-50 shot at best picking a great quarterback. But when you look at the draft picks that the Browns could have had at quarterback, they could have picked and didn't, and you start to look at some of the other draft picks that they've made that haven't been horrible, they haven't been great either. I think that's why you're seeing a guy like John Dorsey come in, and hopefully the hope is for the Browns bringing John Dorsey over from the Chiefs is that they can actually upgrade the talent and start to actually build a football team DePodesta is still there to advise and to put together the strategy. We'll see how much decision making he gets to make in the future and how much input he has, how much John Dorsey and DePodesta get along, how much decision making that Dorsey allows DePodesta to make. We'll see if Jimmy Haslam, the owner, can actually let these two guys work together and work things out, or if there's a lot of interference coming from the top. We'll see how that pans out in the future. But the Browns are sitting pretty. John Dorsey, I guarantee, has never had this kind of cap flexibility that he now has with the Browns. He has also never had, I would doubt, I haven't looked at his history, I doubt he's ever had this many draft picks, or especially this many good draft picks at the top of the draft board. So really, this is a really big offseason for the Browns. We'll see what they do with it. Sashi Brown really did not get the chance to see the results of his work, but I think the Browns were not only worried about the public pressure of 2 horrible seasons, I think they were also worried about, did they have a guy in the organization who could actually draft well, who could actually pick out NFL talent? I think the impression was that they didn't. They had analytics guys who were very smart and could improve the team. They've obviously built a great war chest, but could they actually build a football team? I think you need a football guy to do that. We'll see if John Dorsey is that guy. Hugh Jackson, the coach for the Browns, be heading into his 3rd season. My fear for Hugh Jackson is that he's never really going to get the chance with the Browns to coach a legit team. It is a joke for him to be trying to win with the talent that he's had on the field the past couple of seasons. Could he have won more than 1 game during that time? I think probably yes, but the record, there's no reason to think that the record should have been much better than what it was, maybe a couple of wins extra. But for Hugh Jackson, I think probably the reason they let him stay this season was they wanted to get the new general manager in there, let the new general manager take a look at all that they had, and then make a decision on him next offseason. So my fear for Hugh Jackson is that he's never really going to get a real shot here in Cleveland, that even though you might see the team improve next offseason, that they may just let him go after 3 years. The record's going to be so horrible, and general managers have a tendency, right or wrong, to want to pick their own guy at head coach, and certainly you can understand that. So Hugh Jackson, I think he knew what he was walking into when he did it, that it was going to be this bad, that he wasn't going to have this much talent this quickly. I don't know, but Hugh Jackson probably is going to get 1 more season, and then unless the Browns just really take off next season, which I don't see happening, that may be Hugh Jackson's final season and final chance at the Browns, and hopefully he'll get another shot somewhere else. I think he's fully capable of coaching the NFL and coaching teams to playoffs. Nobody could do this with the Cleveland Browns, though. So here's what they've got, final wrap-up. And I've got the animal telling me it's time to go. Tons of money in the offensive line. Joe Thomas, he's in a tilt year. If they want to let him go for nothing, they can. I don't see that happening. I don't see any way to let Joe Thomas go, even though he's got a big cap number. He's going to stay on the offensive line. Ziegler, they can't let him go. The cap number is going to be too high. It's going to be too brutal, the dead space that they're going to have to eat. So Ziegler's staying. Treader, he's in a tilt year. They could let him go, I think, for a couple of $1 million in dead cap space. They could save $4.5 million if they wanted to. I don't think they're going to do that either. Bitonio, the price there, the dead cap space is too high, so I don't see them letting Bitonio go there either. If you download over here, the only guy on defense that they can let go without a major dead cap hit is Jamar Taylor. He's at 5.3. They could save about $3.5 million on the cap space if they let him go. So they've got the cap flex, the draft picks, and then they've got 2 or 3 guys that they can let go, but I don't think they're going to do that out of these major money guys. Nobody's making such a horrible cap number that they can't use them during the next offseason. All right, that's the Cleveland Browns. Questions, comments? If you like it, don't like it, let me know. Any requests, hit me up with that. As always, you can catch this stuff on Spot Track if you want more of this information. I really like the layout that they have, and I get a lot of the information from them. Not all of it, but a lot of it comes straight from Spot Track. They do a tremendous job. Thank you so much for joining us on Sports and Money. I'm your host, Ben Parker. Have a great one. Bye.